Ladies and gentlemen, it is the day after the August primary. I'm Justin Phillips, the New Fashion Conservatives. With me is Megan Novak of Americans for Prosperity. We're doing this for the Heartland Post, talking about the election day after. So, Megan, couple of big, enormous surprises last night. So we signed off on our live episode at about 9 o'clock, and it was still looking like Francesca Hong had a solid lead, but about 1:30 a.m. last night, Decision Desk called it in favor of David Crowley. Let's give me your thoughts.
I mean, wow. The Democrat establishment machine, they figured out the secret sauce. I mean, we are talking about a candidate who a month ago, give or take on the timeline, but a month ago had dropped out of the race and had never polled above 5%. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, within 2 weeks, he's able to cobble together a surprise primary night victory, really focused in on the more rural parts of the state and with minority voters. I mean, if you're looking at the precinct level data, it matches what we've seen in Michigan and in other socialist-run areas where the socialist line candidate does well with white, affluent, highly educated voters, and the people who don't match that description are going for a more establishment candidate like Crowley. And I'm stunned still. I mean, not a lot of sleep on my end, but I'm stunned.
Yeah, same. I know the polling, the Kalshi data, the prediction markets were all heavily favoring Hong to the point where it was a foregone conclusion. She was inevitable. And around 1:30 a.m. last night, Decision Desk calls it. There was some shenanigans or some issues with Milwaukee County and some ballot dumps that, you know, if you want to argue for election security or you want to say that, there's things going on that are suspicious, Milwaukee made it real easy with that late AM dump, 5 USB ports that were 5 USB sticks that were improperly programmed, or however you want to call it, like just surprises all around.
Right. And I just think it happens every time something gets mixed up in Milwaukee County. And I don't think it was anything nefarious, to be honest. I think it was probably just human error. But at some point, we got to take a closer look at stopping that human error so we can restore trust in our elections, because that's a lot of late night dumps over a long time of history in Milwaukee County where people get rightfully frustrated. They don't want to stay up till 4 a.m. every election because Milwaukee County can't get their elections right. But just points to the overall disaster. I mean, David Crowley oversees Milwaukee County. He's their executive, and that's not the only mismanagement issue happening in Milwaukee. And so, everyone focused on Hong over the last couple of weeks because it was frankly pretty easy to attack her. Woke, whatever version that she was on, woke one, I think is what they were calling it at some point. But I mean, Crowley's got his own host of problems that he's going to have to answer for, from not renewing the health insurance contract for the county employees to fiscal insolvency. I mean, that's not really what people are going to want to look for in a general election candidate.
Exactly. So, where do you think the messaging and strategy went wrong for Francesca Hong? Was it just that her team was made up of some not ready for primetime players? Do you think she staked out some positions? I mean, we know she staked out positions that were far more radical. You know, she was hit from the right and the left on anti-police, anti-policing, anti-Thanksgiving, but she also had a position on data centers that was, it sounded like it was an 80-20 issue because that's how the polling was showing, but the polling was wrong on Francesca Hong. Maybe the polling was wrong there. So, Megan, where do you think the biggest error in her campaign came from?
That Fox News interview she did, that was the start of the downfall. She and her team made a miscalculation to go national far too early. They were inexperienced. They had not been battle tested with moderates or swing voters, let alone conservative viewers and voters. And that just opened the floodgates to all of the crazy things she has said in the past, all of her radical beliefs that, it was like drinking out of a fire hose, kind of trying to keep up with the stories about her. And so I'm stunned, but at the same time by the results, but at the same time, really thinking about it and looking back, of course, a socialist from the Isthmus wasn't going to win statewide. It makes sense now that we think about it. It's just that polling was so wrong. And the data center issue, we were talking about that before we went and started recording, Justin. And it's, we're being told it's an 80-20 issue. And yet you look at Francesca Hong had the most concrete moratorium issue set on data centers. She lost. You look at some of the counties where data centers are the hottest issue, where they're being built. She lost a number of those counties. Mark Bourne in the state assembly, his primary opponent, ran on an anti-data center message, and he won handedly again. And so maybe, yeah, people are concerned about data centers and the electricity and the water usage, et cetera, but it is not the reason they're coming out and voting. That is, sure, maybe 80-20 issue, but it has got to be outside of the top 5 things that they're focused on when they go to the polls, just based on last night's results.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think maybe some of her positions, policy-wise, we're a bit too far outside the extreme. But yeah, I think you're right in saying that Fox News article was the beginning of the downfall, because a lot of conservative X, election Twitter, and even some of the more mainstream publications like Politico and Axios were starting to cover Francesca Hong in a way that you start posting those negative things about her extreme statements on, being anti-Thanksgiving or anti-holiday, and it gets clicks, and then you want to get the next one and the next one. And so I think a surprising amount of oppo on Francesca Hong dropped before the general election that I think the Tiffany campaign might have been ready to sit on it and wait till then. But conservative X got ahead of it and, unleashed it all on her. So it was just an onslaught going into the past couple of weeks. And I think we see that a bit with her endorsements or lack of endorsements. Bernie Sanders comes out and says, I'm focused on the Senate. AOC says, I'm focused on Congress. I'm really not thinking about the governor's race. Even Elizabeth Warren says, I don't know her. So do you think that played into it too, that she didn't get the blessing from the top tier national socialist candidates?
I think so. I think they probably saw something and are more in tune with socialist voters than perhaps you and I are, Justin, not being from that wing of the political ideology spectrum. But they definitely saw something that Hong was not ready for prime time. I mean, if you just put her side by side with some of the DSA candidates who have been successful, Mamdani, El Said, AOC herself, Bernie Sanders, their presentation on the issues is so much more put together and refined than what Francesca Hong was offering. I mean, we literally spent 10 days debating whether the leading candidate at the time for governor liked Thanksgiving or not. That's it. I think you had voters probably on the left saying, I'm sick of this. Like, we're never going to win if we're focused on Thanksgiving instead of the issues people care about. And that was reflected in the results that we see coming out from last night. And some of these margins, even I was just pulling up some of the Dane County precincts. I mean, she won handedly in the Isthmus. No surprise, that's her assembly district. But those results do not hold as you leave the Isthmus. Even in the city of Madison, there are precincts that Crowley carried and pretty handedly. So we've got kind of a reckoning that I think the Dem Party is still going to have to deal with. Of the big question they're going to have to figure out today is, yeah, they got their guy through, they got Crowley through, but how do they keep 40% of their primary voters excited to vote for him come November? I mean, it's not like she lost by a huge margin. It's less than 3,000 votes.
Exactly. And that means, right, as of recording, I believe it's in the recount margin. So Francesca Hong could request a recount that would be covered by the state because it's within a half a point. Right now, she's right at that cusp. I think it's about 0.4 of a point. So, Megan, do you think she goes for a recount? Because that, drags things out for a couple of weeks. That's expensive. I know the state will pay for the recall or cover the costs of the recall, but doesn't cover the cost of all the lawyers and all of the people you're going to need on the ground watching those ballots be hand counted. So do you think, the strategy for Hong right now is to see if they're, question the Milwaukee ballot dump? Does the socialist left become election deniers in this last couple of minutes or hours in the race here?
I wouldn't be surprised if they do, to be honest. I mean, they're going to be in a position where they're very emotional and very upset about Hong losing. I mean, that was more of a cult following than just people going out and voting for a candidate. And I don't mean cult in any disparaging way, but it was a I mean, the people who were backing Hong, if you got yourself on that DSA Twitter algorithm, they are a passionate bunch and they're going to be pretty upset. So I think at the end of the day, Hong, if I'm betting today, I don't think she asks for a recount because I think she wants a future in Wisconsin politics. And there's no better way to alienate a base of voters on either side of the aisle than dragging out a ugly primary even longer. And so I don't think she'll end up doing it, which might even further depress the socialist vote come November because they want a fighter. And if Crowley's not it and then Hong disappoints them, what are they showing up for come November 3rd?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have that same question. Does her base show up for David Crowley? And they were these ride or die socialists. They were on the younger side. They were not traditional voters, not people that showed up in 4 of 4 elections like I think Crowley's base does. And of course, the people that you target to get out in primary. So when she has these lower turnout, low propensity voters in her corner, do they really get motivated for David Crowley? And the assumption was, or what was sold to us via the Hong campaign, was she was knocking hundreds of thousands of doors. She had tens of thousands of volunteers. Do those people carry over and vote for and continue to vote and volunteer for David Crowley, or do they just kind of sit on their hands and maybe begrudgingly, holding their nose, vote for David Crowley in November? So stuff we'll have to keep an eye on. Megan, wrap it up. Do you have any last thoughts on the Hong campaign? Because we have a couple more campaigns to talk about.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just realizing that, the gap here in the Dem Party. I mean, we've talked around it, but there is still a noticeable gap in the Dem Party between the socialist wing and the more establishment wing. And just looking at the numbers, I mean, if this would have been any other gubernatorial primary, Francesca Hong with that just raw vote total would have won. So this is not like she got her butt kicked and is going to go home. I mean, this was a competitive primary with high turnout, and a lot of behind the scenes controversy of how Crowley got back in it. And we're going to see the repercussions of that play out over the next couple weeks. And the other thing I think we haven't talked about, Justin, is while Hong got, I'll say over-oppoed before the primary, Crowley's going to have the opposite problem. He's under-oppoed at this point. Like, they did not get a chance to battle test any of his weaknesses with their base voters, let alone with general election voters. And that's a risky gamble that they're playing by getting him back in that election after he dropped out and only polling at 5%. So I think we're going to see a lot coming out on Crowley over the next few weeks as that oppo begins to emerge from someone that people weren't really taking seriously as a candidate.
Yeah, he's another one who has a whole host of X posts or tweets that can be used against him, though in a much different way, with David having a burner account and fake name and made some crass remarks and some inappropriate jokes on there that, can be used in a negative light. But yes, I think right now the big question will remain if Hong's supporters will end up going for David Crowley. I saw something just before we logged on about Hassan Piker, seemed to be furious and seemed to say that he was taking aim at the Democrat establishment in Wisconsin for not backing Francesca Hong. So, it's really, the permission structure is there for Francesca to tell her voters to stay home, or for, national figures like Hassan Piker to say, Wisconsin isn't worth it. You don't want just another corporate establishment Dem. At this point, the people say, like conservative Democrats or Republican Democrats, even because of how they view that establishment corporate vibe that comes from the Crowley campaign. So, that permission structure is there, and you have to wonder if they're going to take advantage of it and tell people to stay home.
And that Hassan Piker, I mean, he was just on the cover of Rolling Stone. I mean, he has, not that we should respect Rolling Stone and who they choose to put on their covers, but he does have influence in those circles. And if he's already saying that, and, we've got comments from Crowley talking about the need for venture capitalism, which does not align with the DSA wing of the party. So we've got a lot to watch on both how swing voters receive Crowley as the nominee and how their own base does.
Sure. And now, kind of going down the rest of the ticket on the Democrat side, I don't think there were any major surprises. I know we had talked about during our live stream and on the Heartland Post a few candidates that were running that socialist insurgent grassroots campaign, taking on the kind of the coronated candidates, but none of them seem to pull it off. You have Rebecca Cook rematch with DVO. That was one we watched. That was called early in the night, but we thought maybe Cook's opponent could pull that one off. The rest of the slate of the congressional candidates went traditional for the Democrats. There was nothing new there, and I'm looking at these right now. But the big one on the right, for statewide office, has to be the lieutenant governor and secretary of state's races. Will Martin endorsed by the state party for lieutenant governor. Nate Polnell endorsed by the party for secretary of state. Nate Polnell raised more money that's ever been raised for a secretary of state candidate on the Republican side. And he finishes with 25% of the vote, a distant second place to Jay Schroeder. Will Martin finishes behind David Varnum. I'm going to pull up the numbers really quickly. He loses about 56-44 to David Varnum. So do you think there was anything that can be read into that? Is it just a function of, at least for my ballot, and I think most ballots, that David Varnum was top of the ticket, Jay Schroeder was top of the ticket? Jay Schroeder was a perennial candidate who had run before, so maybe had some residual name ID. I talked to a couple folks last night at the Tiffany event saying that Schroeder's a recognizable name, so maybe they just checked that box. So Megan, do you think there was any real deep insight into how those races shook out the way they did?
The only thing that I'm really looking at is on the lieutenant governor one, Will Martin, who's from Southeast Wisconsin, that's his home base. He won Waukesha, Milwaukee, and Racine counties. And from my look, those are the only counties that he won in the entire race. And so I do think there's something with, if your name is listed first on the ballot, you're going to pick up some votes there because voters just might not be familiar. These are low engagement races. People aren't really paying attention to lieutenant governor and secretary of state primaries. But at the same time, Varnum clearly figured out a strategy that worked for his campaign if he was able to carry all but 3 counties. So it'll be interesting to see, given that with the party endorsement, if that changes going forward, given the losses here, as well as how the partnership between Varnum and Tiffany develops, as now they are running mates, since we have kind of an odd structure here in Wisconsin on how we select our lieutenant governors.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and Martin only carried Milwaukee County by 44 votes. He had Martin carries Waukesha County 52-47. And Racine County 51-48. So David Varnum even ran up the numbers, not close in southeastern Wisconsin, but he was putting up outstate numbers that were in 67, 69, 79% in his home. I think Grant was his home county, but 79-20 in Grant County. Like small counties, but you can nickel and dime your way up when you're winning them by 30, 40 points. Just a very surprising one there. And then again, same thing with Nate Polnell. I think there's a lot of expectation that he was going to just run away with it. And overall, I don't know if he even carried more than no, he did not carry any counties. Even unfortunately, even Jefferson County went for Jay Schroeder, and that's his home turf. There's a few that he got close in, but the outstate was just all Jay Schroeder. So surprises there. And I think overall, we know those seats don't necessarily hold a lot of power. They don't do a lot of stuff. I just, that's just a matter of fact. That's not necessarily a knock on candidates. That's the way it is, that you have an office in the basement of the Capitol and you go to a couple boards of the Bureau of Public Lands meeting, but there's not much else going on. So still, again, just people we didn't think would win coming through the primary with pretty surprising gap in the results. So yeah. So Megan, any last thoughts as we get into the next day? We're a couple hours removed from the polls closing and David Crowley being called the victor. Do you think predict if Francesca Hong is going to have a recount. And where do you think the her voters go in November?
I mean, the one interesting thing is I think this is going to be the first time in a while we have a top of the ticket race that doesn't have a third party alternative. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I don't think there's a Green Party or a Constitution Party or anything like that that's going to be on the ballot. And so that is going to be for Hong voters. They're going to kind of be in the position. I mean, there's no such thing really as a successful write-in campaign. And I don't think they'll look at doing that in the general, but they're probably going to be looking at, since there's no Green Party or someone else who aligns more closely with their socialist held values, that they're probably looking at either holding their nose, like you said, and voting for Crowley, or leaving that election blank. And then what does that do in a race that we know it's going to be tight? I mean, even when we were thinking that Hong was going to be the nominee yesterday and the day before, we were all saying it's still going to be tight. Yeah, Hong has some crazy, some wild radical statements out there, but that doesn't mean Wisconsin is going to flip on being a 50-50 purple state. And it's the same with Crowley. I mean, and that's one thing that we haven't talked about yet, Justin, is just this instant doomerism in the online space right now of like, oh, Crowley won, throw our hands up. Everything is lost. I'm not going to vote for Tom Tiffany. I'm not whatever. Like, guys, we cannot have that attitude. Yeah, it's a surprise that Crowley won, but that doesn't mean this race is not winnable. Exactly. I mean, he said in his own words, he doesn't have a lot of policy differences from Francesca Hong. He has baggage. Like, we can win this race. We just have to do the work. I mean, the basics are still there. At AFP, like, we have been knocking doors since February for Tom Tiffany. We've been doing a general election strategy since February because we didn't know who our opponent was going to be. And you can't risk staying home and not helping and not doing the work. And so, I just have to call that out. I think it's so ridiculous to, like, I get a bad hot take every now and again. We all have them, but the doomerism has got to end. We can't have it.
There's a couple of people that need to have a Snickers and, not spiral as much as they have been. And, now there's people who are questioning, maybe we should have had the Operation Chaos for Hong. And, you said these races, even in the most conservative or most politically liberal wave years, 2018, the race was still decided by 30,000 voters. So I have to think you're looking at another situation where you just have 30 to 50,000 persuadable voters that need to come over to Tom Tiffany's side. And you said it last night, we're very lucky that for once the GOP did not have a competitive primary. Josh Schoeman had ran early on, drops out early, becomes the ultimate team player, really just crushing it as a surrogate for Tom Tiffany and the conservative movement. Got to feel great about that. So Tom Tiffany goes in, with a commanding lead in cash, solid name ID because of AFP knocking doors on his behalf. And hopefully people see in the next couple of weeks that, the difference, there's no measurable difference in policy between David Crowley and Francesca Hong.
Correct. And, that's the work we need to do for all of us. And so I encourage everyone who's listening, like, whether you're reaching out to Tom's campaign, whether you're reaching out to AFP, you want to DM Justin himself, like, we will get you connected in ways you can help. If you want to knock doors, make calls, be assert, like, there are so many options of how you can connect with voters and get involved in a tight election. And no one does elections like Wisconsin. Like, where it's invigorating. It's fun. And we're like knowing that it's going to come down to 20,000 votes somewhere in the state. And we have to figure out where those 20,000 votes are and how we're going to win them over. Like, that's fun. And if you're going to be a Debbie Downer and wish cast about what could have been, we don't have time for that right now. Like, the results are over. Crowley won. It's time to move on and be united as a conservative movement. And if we're not united, then that's when we start losing our opportunity to win.
Exactly. And here's hoping the next 3 months are fun. Here's hoping that Francesca Hong pulls the trigger on a recount and starts becoming the election denier that they've always accused Republicans of. So with that, on behalf of the Heartland Post, I'm Justin Phillips of the New Fashion Conservatives. She's Megan Novak of Americans for Prosperity. We're going to have to keep doing more of these because, Megan, it's been so much fun talking to you last night and this morning. Let's keep it going. We'll have you on the pod soon. We'll just do these little hits now and again for us and the Heartland Post, and we'll have some fun with it. And again, hopefully pull out the victory for Tom over the next 3 months.
Sign me up for all of that.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time today. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back soon to keep breaking down election news.